Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. I just got back from the Smoothie King Center where the Lakers won their fifth game in a row, beating the New Orleans Pelicans 104-99 to improve to 9-4 on the season, 3-4 on the road. And I'm not gonna lie, this one was pretty ugly. This was an ugly win, but a win is a win, and the Lakers need wins in the unforgiving West, and they will take it where they can get it. This was a gritty win. They had a big second half comeback. Really started late in the second quarter, but we're gonna touch on the nature of the win, how they made that comeback, and then a couple of other takeaways from this one. But before we get started, you guys know the drill. As always, for those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening in the morning on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. So Lakers are in New Orleans, second night of a back-to-back. They just played in San Antonio. New Orleans also played last night at home against Denver, so they didn't have to travel, but they were on the second night of a back-to-back as well. And both teams were very undermanned. Lakers playing without Rui Hachimura for the second consecutive game, in addition to already being without Jackson Hayes, Christian Wood, Jared Vanderbilt. And then Cam Reddish was a late scratch with, I think they ended up changing his injury distinction. Looking at the box score right now, he's not even on this injury. Well, the injury report for both teams was insane, but Cam was dealing with, JJ called it an acute injury, not something that's serious, but again, half the roster is basically banged up at this point. But it pales in comparison to what New Orleans was dealing with. No Zion, no DeJounte Murray, no CJ McCollum, no Herb Jones, no Trey Murphy III, and no Jose Alvarado. So they're missing multiple, like 4/5 of their starting lineup and 6 of their top 9 guys. So New Orleans is completely decimated. A lot of these guys are second, third string guys, guys like Jeremiah Robinson Earl. Missy, I actually really like, though the Lakers were able to target him late. Javonte Green, Brandon Boston Jr. They have some talented young guys, but these are not rotation level guys on a playoff team. And so first takeaway is going to be a win is a win. And that is because New Orleans started this game really impressively. They were not shooting well, but they were. The game plan was, and JJ actually mentioned it pregame. He was like, "We know this is a team that likes to crash, and that's going to be a big pivot point for us. Is that offensive rebound, defensive rebound battle?" And New Orleans in the first half, JJ said post game, shot 36% on their first attempt. So that's obviously a very low percentage, but they had 12 offensive rebounds in that first half, and they were just killing the Lakers with offensive rebounds. And despite being also, again, on the second night of a back-to-back, despite being undermanned and missing, missing more, quality players and starters, New Orleans was the hungrier team. They were out executing the Lakers on both ends. They were getting out in transition, early offense, and they were just crushing them. And LA, because Rui's out, because Cam's out, they end up starting Dalton Knecht and Max Christie. And given the size discrepancy or the size difference between Max Christie and Brandon Ingram, LA was throwing a lot of extra attention to Brandon Ingram. But what that allowed the Pelicans to do was there was a lot of kick out passes for open threes, a lot of swings, or he kicks it and gets the hockey assist. And it also allowed the Pelicans' weak side guys and corner guys to corner crash and attack the Lakers, both from the baseline, but also in that free throw line battle where LA has struggled at times, especially with their guards getting out physicaled, out hustled by opposing guards, and most teams have an athleticism advantage against the Lakers in the backcourt, and that was the case tonight as well. So basically everything went wrong in the first half. They trailed by as many as 15 points at two different times, and they end up going on this mini run. LeBron gets downhill several possessions in a row and helps the Lakers get some momentum, cut it down to 10. But it was just not, it was looking like, and I was thinking it at the time, it felt like a continuation of the Detroit loss. And JJ actually brought that up post game, that that was something he shared with the team, that he felt like it was trending in that direction in terms of just this young, hungry team out just physicaling them and playing with more energy and verve and tenacity. And then LA, unlike the Detroit game, they did make that run obviously to make it a bit of a game, but they never tied the game. They never took the lead back. They obviously didn't win the game. And in this case, they end up actually taking the lead, outscoring New Orleans 29-15 in the third quarter, behind some incredible shot making from Dalton Knecht, who I will touch on in a little bit, in some great defense by the Lakers, holding the Pelicans to 15 points. And it was honestly a lot of the same defensive quality from the first half. It was just they were actually collecting the basketball defensively. And as JJ said after the game, his halftime message to the team was, go get the fucking ball. And excuse me for cursing, I typically don't on here, but that was the message, and the Lakers did that in the second half. So I think, they looked like a team that was tired, and because of how many guys were out, they were down to really 7 rotation caliber guys. I do like what I've seen from Christian Koloko, and I will touch on him a little bit later as well. But really, like the starters plus Gabe and D'Lo, and then I guess you could say Christian Koloko as well. But Armel Traore got 4.5 minutes. It was pretty rough. He looked like a football player out there, just crashing into guys, and it kind of just this kinetic energy, which in theory could be a good thing, but it didn't really translate into productivity in terms of just the lineup that he was in. No Bronny, no Maxwell. So I see Cam was actually technically active, but just did not dress because of they have the right peroneal strain, which is one of the foot tendons. So the Lakers were undermanned, and because of that, second night of back-to-back, they just had a playoff-like atmosphere game against the Spurs. That was a game that went into crunch time. Some of the guys played heavy minutes. I get it. At the same time, I feel like we see this from this team sometimes, where they can just go through these stretches of malaise and where they're just not trying. And I thought LeBron ended up being the hero of the game and hitting the 2 clutch threes to seal the game, and he busted out the silencer, and his 4 straight triple double streak was ultimately ended. But 21, 7, and 5 for LeBron, and hit the 2 biggest shots of the game, and played with a certain poise that obviously I think that the Lakers needed to pull this one out. But I thought the first first 2 quarters, if not first 2.5, LeBron was pretty subpar defensively, and his rotations as the low man were just non-existent. And even sometimes he would rotate and then kind of get out of the way. There was one play where Missy got a dunk, and LeBron rotated over, and then just at the last second just got out of his way, when I think the right play there is challenge it and you either block it or you foul him. But just giving up, an uncontested dunk. I thought LeBron had some pretty bad defensive possessions through the first 2.5 quarters. D'Angelo Russell picked up 3 fouls in 6 minutes, and he had that one play where he tried crossing over in front of Brandon Ingram, did it so slowly that Ingram just reached out. It took it in one motion, and then D'Lo didn't get back and immediately turned to the coaching staff and tried to justify that someone wasn't running the play correctly. And I thought he ended up, he hit a big 3 in the third, and then had a alley-oop to Koloko in the fourth, and had a big floater in the fourth. But overall, I think D'Lo, his minutes have continually been down. He's now been at 21 minutes in I think 3 of the last 5 or 3 of the last 6 games, and 3 of the last 3 of the last 6 because it was before he got moved to the bench. But LA's 5-0 with him on the bench, and I don't think that is a coincidence necessarily, but I thought he was particularly harmful defensively with his lack of effort, getting beat by guys on the weak side for offensive rebounds and stuff. So he ended up playing better in the second half, but I think it was overall a relatively rough game for D'Lo. He's typically a low turnover guy. He had 3 turnovers tonight. And then those are the guys that kind of stood out. Dalton was picked on. Dalton ended up having a career night, a career high 27 points, which again, I will touch on him with my next takeaway. But like he was being targeted in pick and rolls and guys going at him. And so, and then, Max Christie and Gabe Vincent both defended Brandon Ingram. I thought as well as you can footwork wise and technique wise. It's just Max is 6'5", 6'6", Gabe Vincent 6'1", and Brandon Ingram is 6'9" with a 7-foot plus wingspan and a really high, fading back release that is just really difficult to contest. So I thought those guys from like a footwork perspective were able to get into him and force him into tough shots. But Brandon Ingram is a professional tough shot maker, and he hits them. Even then, he was 11 for 23, so still under 50%. Did get to the free throw line 9 times. But I thought, like the Lakers, to me, the defensive game plan was sound outside of the rebounding, but they shored that up in the second half. Offensively, they went away from AD too much in that second quarter and even parts of the third quarter, but they started to feed him more consistently. And then LeBron did his thing, Dalton did his thing. Austin really struggled, 3 for 15. And like to me, Austin was the guy whose like legs you could just tell like weren't there. And a lot of his shots were short. He also played the most on the team with 41 minutes. But again, in the West, you take a win where you get a win. Was this the Lakers' best performance of the season? No. Was it their best win of the season? No. Did they kind of coast through the first like quarter and 3 quarters and flip the switch to going into halftime, and then especially in the second half? Yes, even then, New Orleans, after LA went up 10, New Orleans responded with a 9-0 run to make it interesting, and then they were trading baskets the rest of the way. But again, there are certainly flaws with this team that we continue to see, especially in terms of effort, defensive rebounding. I will say the transition defense, New Orleans only had 10 points in transition, and that I believe is the Lakers' lowest total or opponent total of the season. So like that's progress there. Granted, like this is arguably the worst team they played when you look at like who is available. So again, I'm by no means calling this a good win or a pretty win, but a win is a win, and the Lakers need wins. They need to make up, for that rough road trip that they had. They've won 5 games in a row. They've taken advantage of having an easier schedule, and with no Rui, no Jackson, no Cam, in addition to no Christian, no Vando. You take the win and you move on. Takeaway number 2 for me is Dalton Knecht is he's figured it out, and we knew that Knecht was NBA ready, and we knew when he dropped that the Lakers got one of these steals of the first round. But Knecht had been up and down to start the year. He had that big fourth quarter against Cleveland, and he had some, hit some big shots in the Phoenix and Sacramento games, but he had not really broken out until this last stretch here of 3 games, with 19 against the Grizzlies, 14 against the Spurs, and then now a career high 27 against the Pelicans. Also had a career high 7 rebounds, nearly doubling his previous career high of 4. And Dalton, he really, the thing that's impressed me the most with him is, like, he just does not need a lot of time to get a shot off. And the Lakers, even guys like Austin and D'Lo, and going back to last year, like Torian and whichever plus shooter you want to mention, Rui, even LeBron, like those guys just have slower releases, and they need a certain amount of time to get a shot off. They need to create space with a step back or a screen. And Dalton is just like, you give him a sliver of space to just set himself, or not even set himself, just to really get into his shooting pocket and just go up in one motion. And Dalton is getting a good look, and there's a good chance it's going to go down. And so right now he's shooting 40.4% on threes this season, which is the highest mark among all rookies that have attempted at least 15 3-pointers. So like he's arguably right now the best shooter in the rookie class. He's playing at one of the highest levels of any rookie. I think if this continues, he'll be on an all rookie team and potentially in the mix for rookie of the year. And like, this is the guy that the Lakers were thrilled to have fall to them in the draft. This is the guy we saw flashes of in summer league and in the preseason. And I think it took him a little bit of time to get his footing and just to figure out his role within the offense and for the Lakers to also figure out the best way to use him. But JJ said at postgame, like, he wasn't even calling that many sets for Dalton. It was just a lot of stuff happening organically within the flow of the Lakers offense and progressing from one action into another action, and then like, okay, now there's a cross screen or there's a flare screen or there's a back screen and Dalton's just slipping open. It wasn't just the shooting. He did have 5 threes, but he also had several dunks, including, I forgot who he dunked on New Orleans in the fourth, but it was kind of on 2 guys. And so like you're seeing the athleticism with Dalton. You're seeing the quick trigger shooting and the different ways that they also he hit a 3 off of just a simple AT, or I forgot if it was an ATO or it was a baseline out of bounds play, but I don't remember if it was coming out of a timeout or not. But like, Dalton led the team in plus 11, but the 27 points, the rebounding, like he's unafraid to get in there, get his hands dirty, and that's something that not too sort of stereotype shooters, but a lot of shooters don't. Like a lot of guys that have some of the skill set that that Dalton has aren't willing to get into the paint and aren't willing to muck it up and get their hands dirty in terms of the rebounding and some of the gritty work. And I thought he had a couple of big offensive rebounds. He had a big offensive rebound in the fourth, had a couple steals. Now, I will say, I've already seen it, like people saying that Dalton should be the starter and replace Rui or replace Cam. And like, I think my read on the situation is I think Rui and Cam are going to continue to start once both guys come back, but Dalton has played himself into a sizable role where he should be leading the bench in minutes moving forward. And I would not be surprised if he ends up starting at one point. I think given Rui's standing on the team, I think you don't just lose your spot because you got injured. I know Rui hasn't been playing well and hasn't been playing as well as Dalton has been playing. And that, to me, would be the factor of why you replace Rui with Dalton. But that said, I also think Dalton is giving them something that D'Lo gave them for a couple of games, but hasn't been giving them recently in terms of that off the bench scoring pop. Obviously, the last couple of games he started, but I think for now, Dalton's probably going to be coming off the bench. But again, I think he's played himself into a bigger role, whether it's starting or coming off the bench. And the one thing, again, though, that I think is the one concern with Dalton is just the defense has still not been good. I think he competes. I think there are moments where, again, 2 steals, like he can make plays because he's athletic, but the lateral foot speed in terms of keeping guys in front of him and guys being able to target him in pick and rolls, that's kind of been progressively happening more and more. It's like it feels like the scouting report now is out that you can go at Dalton and attack him, just attack his point of attack defense and get downhill. So I like him more in lineups where you have AD, you have a Cam Reddish or a Max Christie out there. You have at least like 2 or 3 plus defenders. That I think is the best way to use Dalton. But when he's shooting like this and he's playing at this level offensively, and it's now been 3 games in a row, it's just hard to keep that guy off the floor. So I'm by no means like trying to throw cold water on the Dalton stuff. Like I think he should be playing 25 plus minutes basically every night moving forward, whether he's starting or coming off the bench. But I think Rui has a certain standing, and I think it's earned. Some people could disagree, but Rui is, one of the highest paid players on the team. He's been a starter going back to last season, and maybe, and I also think he's been better defensively than Dalton, and that's I think that's certainly a factor here. Is just like, are you potentially recreating some of the issues that you previously had when you had the D'Lo Austin backcourt? It's not quite the same because you still have Cam out there, but I do think it's a notable downgrade going from Rui to Dalton defensively. That there's a size element. Even though Rui hasn't been rebounding the ball as well as he did to start the season, like there's still like a physicality there. And Rui, especially in certain matchups, can be a plus post defender and take on some of those matchups and save LeBron. Like if you're starting Dalton, Cam, and Austin, LeBron has to guard fours. LeBron, like if you're playing the Timberwolves again, it's not going to be Rui on Julius Randle. That has to be LeBron now on Julius Randle. And that's just one example, but like there are a lot of examples. I think if you go across the league of matchups where you could kind of use Rui and save LeBron, and instead, if you have Dalton out there, you have to use LeBron. And I just think that's a really high defensive ask. So when Vando comes back, but even then, maybe Vando takes the Cam role, and then Dalton can replace Rui. And then because Vando's bigger than Cam and more versatile than Cam defensively, I think you can kind of like basically whoever's the best 1 through 4 guy, you put Vando on him, and then you figure out, is it Austin, is it LeBron, or whatever. But my one concern with starting Dalton is I think it tips the scales of the offense. I mean, of the defense with the starters to, it diminishes it to a certain level that until he improves on the defensive end, I have a little bit of concern with it, but we'll see. Like, I mean, if he's going to shoot like this and continue to shoot like this, it might not matter. And again, regardless of if he's starting or coming off the bench, I think he's guaranteeing himself a significant role. And we're starting to see the minutes shift. And D'Lo's been playing a bit less. Gabe is had to play more, but he's played less than Max now in consecutive games. I think there's an argument to be made that Max should take. I was already making it before Max had the comeback against the Spurs and now the Pelicans, but had a rough offensive game, but I thought defended Ingram well and had a huge offensive rebound tip out that sealed the game. Also hit a big jumper in the fourth late shot clock. So I think Max has been better than Gabe. Like the last couple of games of Max have been more impactful than Gabe has really been all season. And I think at this point, because D'Lo is already coming off the bench, I don't think you need that additional ball handling from Gabe. I just think Max is a better player right now and should take that spot. So if we're looking at like the healthy rotation, I think it's the same starting lineup with AD, LeBron, Rui, Cam, and Austin, and then Dalton, D'Lo, Max, and Jackson / Christian Koloko, depending on when Jackson comes back. And then when Vando and Christian come back, I think it's when for Vando and more of an if for Christian, we'll see. Then the Lakers have a tougher decision to make in terms of like who's the guy coming out of the rotation at that point. And is it Vando for Cam, and then maybe Cam's the odd guy, because Cam has not played well the last couple of games, but it's only a couple games. So that's my take on Dalton. Like a lot to be encouraged by. I think the effort stuff, like the shooting, the scoring, we knew that was there. We knew it was a matter of time until he progressed in a positive sense. But I've been impressed by the rebounding and just him getting in the paint and being physical. And again, I think there's a lot of shooters that don't play with that physicality and athleticism. And that's something that he can dunk on people. He can cut into space and finish through contact, draw fouls. Like there's a lot more to his game, as I've talked about, than just the shooting, even though that's something the Lakers need. And he led the team, had almost half of their 3-point makes. And then my final takeaway, I'm going to take it in a little bit of a different direction and focus on a smaller thing, which is Christian Koloko's growth. And I thought this was by far the best game that Christian Koloko played. Now, granted, I think the competition, again, this is probably the worst team that the Lakers have played this season. Arguably, I mean, it's between them and Toronto, but and Brandon Ingram is better than anyone healthy on Toronto, but I think some of the role players with Toronto are better than New Orleans role players, but it's close, right? But either way, regardless of that, like Christian Koloko, 6 points, 6 rebounds, 4 offensive rebounds, had 2 putbacks, had that lob from D'Lo in the fourth quarter, had a steal, had a block, contested multiple shots, and like I just think you see what the potential is with him. Of he is long, he is big, he's athletic. I think he's starting to figure out the timing of opposing offenses and how to contest and not foul. And he only had 1 foul tonight. And I think that the rebounding, like his positioning, his timing, all that stuff is really, really solid. And I think he went from sticking out in a negative way to kind of just playing himself into just being out there and not really standing out positively or negatively, but just being fine, just treading water, to tonight was a plus. And what was it? Lakers are +3 in his 11 minutes. And for LA to win non-AD minutes is a big development, right? And I still would assume Jackson is going to be ahead of him once Jackson comes back. But Christian, to me, is a better rebounder and rim protector than Jackson. And he did attempt a 3-pointer. He airballed it. So I think the shot's still a work in progress. But Christian has continually looked more comfortable out there. And I think if there's a blessing or a benefit, a positive, whatever term you want to use, to the recent front court injuries, like LA's still been winning. And I think Christian Koloko's gotten some much needed reps, experience, development that he probably would not have gotten if Rui was healthy, if Jackson was healthy, and if Christian Wood was healthy, if Vando was healthy. So as we look, bigger picture, longer term, rest of the season, I assume most, if not all, those guys will come back at some point, and Christian will probably fade into the background and go back to being with South Bay and playing more there. But if he needs to be called up at some point, if the Lakers remake the roster, if there's another series of injuries, if Christian Wood it just doesn't play again or is out for a couple more months or whatever, and Jackson's in foul trouble, or Jackson's not playing well, or Jackson gets injured again, I think you now can rely on Christian Koloko in a way that I don't think you could say that confidently as recently as like a week ago. So I think Christian has, from the Memphis game on, has just continued to progress and grow. I think he's absorbed things, very quickly. I think he's looked a lot better in each game and each shift, and the physical tools are there. And I think now that the next step has been the mental side of the game, and he's starting to figure it out. And you combine that, and like, this is a dude who I think, like, longer term, has the potential to be a really solid backup center. I think that's his upside. And whether that's this season or in future seasons, like, I think the Lakers have something here with him, and it's would be smart for them to continue to grow and develop and nurture him. So I think for me, in terms of like a bigger picture takeaway, like they got the win. Dalton had the career night. He'll probably have future career nights scoring more than 27 this season. But Christian Koloko, that's like just something I'm monitoring, keeping track of in terms of his continued growth and development. And maybe he does end up pushing Jackson Hayes for that backup 5 spot. Like, I think it's too early to make the call either way, but he has some physical traits and some skills that Jackson doesn't quite have in terms of the defense and the rebounding. And those have been 2 things that the Lakers have really needed. So at least until Christian Wood is out, I think Christian Koloko should be in that mix for the backup 5 spot. And I've just been really impressed with him. And this was like the first game where I felt like he really made an impact. And again, a couple of putbacks, alley-oop dunk, a block, a steal, contesting and challenging and changing multiple shots defensively. Like, I thought he had a couple really nice shifts for the Lakers, and an improvement even on last night. So those are my 3 takeaways from tonight's game. Let's get into the Q&A portion. I see we have some super chats, so I will get into it now. Norma Maldonado, that is my mom. Thank you for the super chat. 80's eye looked bad in post-game interview. What's the status of his eye? Please hit the like button. Thanks. Yeah, 80's eye has been very red. I talked about it last night in the stream. It's been like my XLR cord here. I don't know if you guys can see it. Like his eye is like this color, and it's somehow gotten worse. I think it was a little bit better tonight, but one thing has been typically during AD likes to talk at his locker, and the TV crew will turn on a camera or a light above the camera, and tonight they were just like no light. Like AD can't deal with the light, and even last night it was bothering him as well. So he's playing through his eye being busted up, and he's sensitive to light. It's been affecting him before and after games, and dude still went out. I didn't even say his stat line, 31 and 14. Like, he just walks into 30-point games. He's had a 30-point game in 8 of 12 games this season. 12 of 20 from the floor, 5 of 7 from the free throw line, 2 steals, a block. Like, 80's been Lakers' best player by far, and it's just been incredible this season. Shibugen, someone's got to ask how much rope Gabe has. Overwhelmingly negative impact, bottom of the league offensive production. This is unsustainable. Well, I will say that I listened to the chat. I listened to all of you, and I asked about Quincy Oliveri pregame. I asked JJ, he's had 2 monster games in the G League. Have you given any thought to calling him up and potentially giving him a shot to earn rotation minutes? And JJ said no, that is not something that they're considering right now. So I didn't get a chance to ask a follow-up on that. Maybe I could have followed up on, like, what have you seen from Quincy? What have you thought of his play in the G League? And what do you think it would take to potentially get a role with the team or at least a shot in the rotation? But that's not kind of how press conferences work. It typically just goes on to the next question. So I was curious too, because I felt like this would have been a nice game to have Quincy of, Armel Traore ends up playing 5 minutes or 4.5. You could have just thrown Quincy out there, and yes, you would have been smaller, but just see what you have. Like, I'm not quite sure why LA hasn't been able, willing to do that. And I bring up Quincy just because I think that's like the natural Gabe replacement. Now, I do think when Cam and Rui come back, there's a chance just Max takes Gabe's role. Now, JJ has been a fan of Gabe clearly, and has trusted him and has closed games with him. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Max just ends up being the odd man out. And that's something I'm going to be intrigued by. Lakers now have a couple of days off until their next game on Tuesday against Utah. And that's a very winnable game. It's also an NBA Cup game. So it's a game that they should be trying for. And I would assume, one would assume Rui and potentially Cam are back. And if Rui and Cam are back, then what does that mean for the rotation? But I'm with you. I thought Gabe had a really good defensive game, but it just continues to be he's just a non-factor offensively. I think a non-factor is putting it kindly. He's a glaring minus offensively, and he was a team worst -9 in the 22 minutes he played. So again, I've talked about it, there's a lot of noise in single game plus minus. So I don't you can kind of cherry pick some of these things to try and make an argument, but Gabe has continually been a minus and plus minus. And I just think the Lakers often look worse when he's on the floor. And I don't I think he's trying to do the right, I think he's an effective defender. Cran just tweeted it out that the B-ball index percentiles have Gabe as an A defender in a lot of categories, and a B to A defender. And I don't think he's been quite at an A level, I would say, but I think he's been solid. I've said solid to good. That's kind of the way I've described it. But offensively, he's been such a minus that it offsets any of the positive stuff that he's bringing defensively. I think the Lakers have a roster construction problem though, because if you're not playing Gabe, like the drop off from Gabe to D'Lo defensively, like if you're just making D'Lo that, and I know that they're not necessarily playing the same position, but it's just like at some point you kind of need the plus defenders out there, and it could just be Max taking Gabe's spot. But on nights like tonight where they're shorthanded, they did kind of need Gabe, and it would be nice if he could hit some shots, and he did hit a couple of big shots in the Spurs game, but yeah, it's too many zeros, too many Tony Snell like stat lines for him, and that's not what the Lakers are paying him. That's not what they signed him to be. So while I think he's been better than maybe people want to give him credit for defensively, just because they're upset with the offense, I can't deny how bad the offense has been. And at this point, he's basically been unplayable for most of the season. Jason Sutton, thank you for the super chat. When everyone is healthy, what would be your ideal rotations with Cam and Knecht showing they can provide solid minutes? I'm curious to see what JJ does. Yeah, I think at this point, I'm more okay with Dalton starting if Vando's starting, because I think you can still protect LeBron. Because I think that right now Rui is LeBron protection defensively in terms of taking on the Kevin Durant or the Julius Randle. And is Rui ideal to guard? I think he actually does a really good job against Julius Randle. Is he the ideal guy to defend Kevin Durant? No. But compared to that defensive ask on LeBron, in addition to the offensive ask with LeBron being in year 22, age 40, or about to be, like, I just think you need a big body to just eat innings. And until Vando's back, I think Rui kind of has to be that guy. Now, maybe you could put Cam on a Kevin Durant, right? And there's certain matchups that Cam, I think, can take on some bigger assignments. But I also think there are some matchups that even for Cam would be pretty tough compared to how they would go for Vando. So I'm starting to come around to, I think Vando should probably start when he's back, and I think it's going to take him a few games to get acclimated and get off of, I assume he'll be on a minutes restriction, but I would probably go something like I'd be interested in AD, LeBron, Vando, Dalton, Austin, and then Rui, D'Lo, Max, Christian if he comes back, or Jackson. And that's only one of Christian or Jackson. That's no Gabe. And in this scenario, that's no Cam. I don't know. I think Cam versus Max is going to be interesting, because I think the version of Max we've seen the last couple of games, he's still not as good defensively as Cam, and that might be where Cam just gets the edge. But he is better offensively, and I think he makes a lot of winning plays. And look, Cam has made some of those, and that's why he earned the starting spot. But maybe it's just recency bias with the last couple of games that Cam has played. But I feel like Cam was playing with a certain level of energy and effort and doing the little stuff for several games there. And I feel like he stopped doing it as much the last couple of games. So that to me would be something to monitor, is like, how does Cam continue? Like, does he regress to a pumpkin and play more like the guy that fell out of the rotation last year? Or does he play like the way he was the first few games back in the rotation, the way he was in November last year? And that guy, you could talk me into being better or at least deserving to play over this version of Max. But I think Max has been really solid the last couple of games. I know he didn't hit shots tonight, but the defense, the rebounding, and just the little stuff, the making the extra pass, I think his decision making has been much better. And we talked to him after the game, and I was asking him, like, what did you learn while you're out of the rotation? And he was like, I didn't necessarily learn anything that I didn't know, but I was able to take a step back, reflect on my game, go over film, talk to the coaching staff, and really just study, like, what am I doing wrong, and learn from it. And that was kind of what I talked about a couple of streams ago when I was talking about Max and what I felt like was going to be the outcome if he ever entered the rotation again. And I think he's entered the rotation again and really helped. So that I think will be an interesting battle in terms of Cam versus Max and who could kind of win that out potentially like longer term. But I would say if we're going 9 again, I think there's 8 for sure, which in my opinion should be AD, LeBron, Dalton, Vando, Austin, D'Lo, Rui, and then one of the bigs, one of the centers, and then the 9th spot to me would be between Max and Cam. But curious to see what you guys say in the chat about your projected rotations. Next one from Kronos. How do you feel about flipping Gabe and JHS for Thibault when healthy and Kamara? Tumani isn't 7 foot but plays big. I know adding real draft capital would be an overpay, but their fit might make it worth it. I would not give up a first round pick for this deal. I would give up a second round pick. You could maybe talk me even into 2 seconds. Like I don't mind overpaying with seconds. I think seconds can be very valuable. I don't want to diminish them, but like I think if you give up 2 seconds for a trade that helps you, I don't think that's like a crazy overpay. So I would not do a first for this, but I would be interested in a second. Thibault could certainly help. I know his shot has been so hit and miss over the years that's like the one concern, but I think he's like a better version of Cam, and I do like Kamara. So yeah, I mean, and it's really just Gabe basically for those guys because JHS is just not going to be in the rotation. Matthew, thank you for the super chat. I'm obsessed with Lakers trading for Miles Turner. Not a great rebounder. He's a shot blocker, shooting nearly 40% from 3. D'Lo plus JHS makes below first apron. Sorry guys, I'm super tired. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna try keep it under an hour. We'll see. But this is actually one of my biggest. One of the biggest streams. So you guys are giving me the juice to keep going, but my reading comprehension skills are not great right now. JHS, so D'Lo plus JHS makes below first apron math work. Sure, Indy would want both first. Turner, 80, Braun would be huge with a smiley emoji. So we're going down a rabbit hole here because I wanted the Lakers to get Miles Turner years ago, right? And anytime that rumor popped up, I always thought it made sense. Going back to the Russ trade, I think it ended up working out because the Lakers made the conference finals, but I think there's an alternate universe where they trade for Buddy Hield and Miles Turner at the beginning of the season, and they just have an awesome season, and you could still have done you still could have done the Rui trade with Kendrick Nunn. You still would have had Patrick Beverley to trade. You still would have had Thomas Bryant to trade. And you probably lose Vando and D'Lo and Malik Beasley, though he really had like one good game and that was it. But would that extra 50 games of Turner and Hield be worth not having to have Russ and get into that hole? And I kind of think so. I think there's a scenario where the Lakers do that trade and just win like 50 plus games and still make the conference finals, or or maybe they end up being on the same side as Denver and like they lose in the second round, but it was like just a better season overall and a more sustainable season. Now, I think that the Buddy Hield part of it hasn't aged as well, though he is playing really well with Golden State, but he's been a pretty inconsistent player up to this point in his career, and I don't think has ever, like the theory of Buddy Hield has always been better than the actual on-court product, aside from, I guess, Golden State, where they just know how to unlock and unleash three-point shooters. But Miles Turner next to AD is that's because AD it's fine that Miles Turner isn't a plus or like a dominant defensive rebounder because AD is, right? And those two can complement each other so well that you have easily the best rim protection duo in the league. Like, I think you could throw in Allen and Mobley and you could throw in Giannis and Lopez, but I would take Turner and AD over those two respectively, just from a rim protection perspective. Obviously, there's some, I would say, especially with Cleveland, there's some versatility there that they have that is probably better than Turner and AD as a combination. But that's like we're talking about the Lakers defense in a totally different light. If the starting front court is Turner, AD, and LeBron, and Buddy Hield's a guy you probably have to hide, but depending on like the makeup of the roster, I think it would have a bunch of ripple effects where this would just be a much different roster. I think there's a chance that they're a top 10 defense with that back line of Turner and AD. And then you're staggering LeBron and AD a bunch, but you're also staggering Turner and AD as well. And so you're having like an elite rim protector on the floor for 48 minutes, which is not the case right now, because anytime LA takes AD off, it's a significant drop off to Koloko, Hayes, Wood, whoever it's going to be. So I would love this trade. Now, I think what's Indiana's record right now? I'm going to pull this up quickly. So Indiana right now is 5-7. They are tied for 8th in the East. I think if things go really south, there's always a chance that teams are willing to pivot and make certain guys available. I'm with you. I think the price would be high. I think they'd probably ask for both first. I don't know. I think that's a steep price to pay because there's no more Buddy Hield in this deal, right? It's only Miles Turner. I would certainly do it for a first. I would consider like a first and a swap, or a first in like a couple seconds. I think 2 firsts is a lot. Like if you canvass the league and you really evaluate all the options, and that's like the best option the Lakers realistically have, I would consider it. I do think it's an overpay for Miles Turner, but I think the potential defensive upside is incredible. So yeah, I mean, I'm a Miles Turner guy in terms of like, I just think he's been really good, really underrated. He can be a bit of a finesse big at times. So I feel like people kind of overlook him in terms of his defense or his rebounding or whatever, but I think he's really, really solid. So I like this. Shabugan, are we worried that Gabe is JJ's Taurean Prince? No. And I've made this, I made the distinction. So it depends how you want to define Taurean Prince. Is he the guy in the rotation that like has too big of a role that's potentially costly to the team? I will entertain that. But with Taurean, he was starting over Rui and Vando, 2 guys who were clearly better than him, and the franchise had just invested in and had been a big part of their Western Conference Finals run. And it was, but there was also this ripple effect where, like, because the starting lineup wasn't working, Darvin decided then to pull from Austin Reeves and then pull from D'Lo, and he refused to pull from Taurean. And it was like the first, going back, even the Cam move ended up working out for, a couple weeks there, 2-3 weeks. But the Lakers, like, the first move should have been pulling Taurean and put Cam in, or pull Taurean and put Rui in. And that should have been the first guy pulled from the starting lineup. Like, he was far and away their 5th best starter and the worst starter, the guy they were the least committed to. And the fact that, like, so I'm going off on a tangent here with Taurean, but it was like he was playing over worse players, and in some cases playing double the amount of minutes than them. And because the coach was refusing to reduce his role, it was also having this effect where now Austin has to come off the bench. Now that eventually D'Lo comes off the bench. Then at one point it's Austin, D'Lo, and Rui, and it's like, what are we doing here? Like, this guy, he has a role, but he's a 15 to 20 minute a night guy, 25 tops. He's not a 35 minute a night guy at the expense of Rui, Vando, Austin, and D'Lo. Like that, it was just insanity. So my thing with Gabe is, like, who is Gabe really taking the minutes of? Like, tonight, who was supposed to play more? Like, okay, if you reduce Gabe from 22 to 10, maybe you play D'Lo more. You could have played Max a little bit more. Dalton was at 37. LeBron was at 37. AD was at 37. Also, second night of a back-to-back. Austin was at 41. Like, I don't see who is supposed to be playing over Gabe that much. And like, D'Lo had a pretty rough game. Max was right at 30 minutes. Maybe you play him 34, 35. So I just, in general, though, I think when the rotation is healthy, you can make the case that if Gabe is still playing 18, 20 minutes, that is coming at the detriment of someone else. But if it's like Gabe over Max or Gabe over Cam, well, I don't agree with it, and I think it is potentially detrimental or harmful. It's not like Gabe is starting and there's this ripple effect with like 4 of the top 6 players are now all of a sudden being affected and not playing as much. And we're not seeing LeBron and AD and Rui or LeBron and AD and Vando. Like it wasn't just that Torian was starting. It was that then Rui was not playing with those guys. Vando wasn't playing with those guys. We weren't seeing the lineups that helped the Lakers make the conference finals. So I feel like I could write a book on my issue with the first 50 games of last season, and that was just a part of it. But maybe I will write that book. It just I think the Torian situation was way worse than the Gabe situation, in my opinion. Jeff Nunez, I think JJ's playing. Thank you for the super chat. I think JJ's playing Gabe to build any value post. I'm not sure what PSB means, but I'm guessing you mean to trade. I mean, the problem is it's not going well. I think Gabe Vincent's value was higher 3 weeks ago than it is right now. I don't see how you can make an argument that like he's played himself into being more valuable. So if anything, I think the Lakers just kind of accept the loss that it's not a good contract. It's not a contract people are going to want, even though he's not making that much. And you take the L on it and you move on. I think playing him more, I don't see, unless he becomes a player that the player he was 18 months ago, and there's really no signs he's going to become that player, at least offensively. I think his value's only gone down. And then Justin Tyndall, Braun/AD saying over to you, Genie/Plinka, we want to win, do you? I think that the Lakers have, so I'm going to pull up the schedule. And if you look at the Lakers schedule, they got, let's see. I don't know why it showed it from, okay. This is weird. But Jazz, that should be a win. Magic, tough game, but should be a win. Nuggets at home is going to be a really tough game, though Denver, I think, is more beatable now. At Suns in an NBA Cup game. At Spurs, second night of a back-to-back. That'll be tough. Game right before Thanksgiving. Get back from Thanksgiving, and it's the Thunder. Over that stretch of 6 games, like I think the Lakers should go at least 4-2, if not 5-1. And if they can do that, like let's say they go 5-1 and they're 14-5, I think they like the feet are held to the fire a little bit in terms of this team is really good. And, yes, they've taken advantage of an easy stretch of their schedule, but that it's going to be made up in February and March. If you look at the Lakers' February and March schedule, it's quite ridiculous, especially that 1 month stretch there where they play like Denver, Boston, Milwaukee, OKC, Phoenix. Like they have a murderer's row stretch there. But outside of that stretch, this is an easier stretch coming up. And if they make the most of it, and we're looking at like late November, early December, and this team is in that 4 or 5 seed range, I think that starts to apply some pressure of like, if like, I don't think it's 14-5. I don't think, like, given their schedule and just given the depth of the league right now, it's hard to do much better than that. And we can say that they probably blew the Detroit game, and the Phoenix game, and like maybe they, with another one of those, they're 15-4 or whatever. But 14-5 is a pretty good start under most circumstances. And if the Lakers are 14-5, I think we need to have a different conversation. Even 13-6 of like, what is this team's ceiling, and are they worth investing in? And I think the answer is yes to the latter one. In terms of ceiling, I still think that's to be determined. But I think if Lakers keep winning, I think that increases the odds they make a deal, and I think that's the way that this is trending. Okay, let's get into the chat. Rob Earth, what is the current status of Rui and Hayes? Rui well, Rui was there. Rui's just been chilling in the locker room on his phone with his headphones on. But Rui was there. So Rui's got the right ankle sprain, and Jackson's got the right ankle sprain. So Rui, it's not supposed to be something that's supposed to keep him out long. I think there's a chance he'll be back on Tuesday. And with Jackson, so he did tell ESPN when he arrived in the walking boot. So I don't think Jackson was on this trip. I didn't see him in either San Antonio or New Orleans. There's always a chance he like sneaks in through the back and that is just out of the way when the media is there. Like there are ways to do that, but I don't think Jackson made the trip. And then LeBron, I asked him post game about Christian Koloko, and he mentioned Jackson out a couple weeks. So I don't know if that was like from the injury that he's going to miss a couple weeks, or if it's a couple weeks from now, or if that's LeBron just saying a timetable or a timeline off the top of his head, and it not necessarily like maybe it meant nothing, and I'm just reading into it, but it does seem like Jackson's going to miss at least a couple more games, if not another week or so. But again, with the recent injury stuff, I'm quite skeptical about timelines and timetables, and I like to see guys back on the floor in uniform before I really believe that they're going to be coming back, because we've now seen this with multiple players. So I wouldn't be getting my hopes up with it, but again, like we'll see. So I think what Jackson situation is certainly more serious than the Rui situation. Like Rui was on the trip and was just chilling and resting the ankle. Okay, I see another super chat here from PNG. What's up? Remember we once talked a bit about streaming services. I've begun to use OBS Studio. Consider giving it a look. It is phenomenal. Go LA. Thank you, PNG. I appreciate that. I was actually, so Trevor Lane made the drive from Memphis out to here in New Orleans, and we were talking about it, and he said he used to use OBS, but he switched to StreamYard just because it's a bit simpler. And that's been my experience with StreamYard. I've tried Riverside. I had that horrible preseason stream with Riverside, and I'm not going back. But I've enjoyed StreamYard. It is pretty user friendly, but I've heard a lot of good stuff about OBS. I know that's a very popular one, probably actually more popular than StreamYard. But I wouldn't say I'm tech challenged. I'm also not super tech savvy. I'm probably in like the 80th percentile. So I think it just seems like it's a lot more work to understand it and whatnot, to my knowledge. So that's my only hesitation. I'm Guerrier Bantu. I'm sorry, I just butchered that. My middle name's actually Guillermo, so I was trying but the double R there is throwing me off. What about Cam Reddish? Cam is again, he's dealing with a right peroneal strain, and JJ said it's an acute injury and that it's not something that is expected to keep him out long. He also mentioned his thumb, that he'd been banged up with his thumb. Cam had been dealing with an ankle injury entering the season, so Cam seems to just be a little bit banged up, and I think he might just need a little bit of rest, but it's also a situation where he could be back on Tuesday, though I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he misses one more game. Ken Carter, what do you think about Larry Nance Jr.? I like Larry Nance Jr. I think he's like, I don't love him as like your primary backup center or like your only backup center, but if you have a Jackson Hayes or a Christian Wood and a Larry Nance, I like the versatility there. I think he fits in a switching scheme really well, which I think would fit well with what JJ wants to do. So he's versatile defensively. He could guard some of those bigger wings that they're a little bit slower, but then he could also defend in the post and defend bigger guys. And I think he's just one of those guys who just makes all the little plays. He makes the extra pass. He gets offensive rebounds, sets good screens, cuts well, hustles, and seems to be a really good teammate, always locked in. And like, this is nothing that Laker fans don't know, but he's, I think, just grown throughout his career and been a really valuable role player and now multiple stops. I think it's kind of weird that he's bounced around so much. Like it feels like he's a guy that you would want. And it feels like he's kind of sometimes been like a throw in some of these deals, or like not, teams just haven't kept him for that long. But I like Larry Nance, and if there was a way for LA to get him, I think he would help. Sky Falcon is Rui day to day. Yeah, I don't think there's an official timetable, but that's like the gist of it. Ryan Rich, what do you think the team could do better so they won't have these slow starts to the game? Well, this has been a thing. Like, remember the Lakers going back to last season, that the 8 opening games of the season, they had the worst first quarter differential in NBA history. And for whatever reason, this group just like will go through these lulls or this malaise where they just don't have their foot on the pedal. And I think honestly, in some cases, it's on LeBron and AD, and those guys can just kind of coast sometimes. And granted, they carry such a big workload that like no star is going 100% of the time. Even Giannis is going 100% of the time, all the time, right? Or giving 100% all the time. So I think it's maybe being a little bit more selective about, but like LeBron kind of talked about it with, I want to say it was, I forget if it was the Memphis game or the San Antonio game. It might've been the Memphis game. I think it was the Memphis game, about kind of just like feeling out a game. It was the Memphis game. Not getting too high, not getting too low, and kind of just knowing that just the ebbs and flows of a game that you can kind of like figure things out as the game progresses. And that's kind of how LeBron has always been. Like going back to the playoffs with him, there's often that feel out in game one, and he will download the information and then make the adjustments and then go on to win the series in 5 if they drop game 1 or whatever. But I think there's like an element of that in those guys. Like LeBron's about to be 40, AD's 32 or going to be 32, has dealt with a lot of injuries. Like relying on those guys to be your motor, I think is they can do it a lot of nights, but there's going to be the nights where they're off, especially I think sometimes with a lesser opponent, because they kind of look at it and like tonight's kind of reinforced that approach where it's like, we can kind of coast for a quarter and a half, a quarter and 3 quarters, and basically a first half, and then flip the switch and beat a team like this. And they can, but it's obviously something you don't want to create those bad habits. So I think part of it's that, but I think in general, like the Lakers don't have a lot of high motor players. I think they could use more of that. I think that's where they miss Jared Vanderbilt. I think that's where Jackson Hayes is useful. I think Max Christie is a high motor guy, Cam Reddish. So like, they have some of these guys, but some of these guys have been banged up. They don't always play together. And I think part of it, but also like, I don't want to overlook the fact that it's the second night of a back-to-back. And while New Orleans was also on the second night of a back-to-back and they're more injured than the Lakers are, they also didn't have to travel. They were in the comfort of their own home. LA had to travel last night. Like that stuff matters. I know it's not a cop out. It's not an excuse by any means, but that stuff matters. A-Dub, Knecht, Rookie of the Year. What do y'all think? I mean, if he keeps this up, he's, yeah. Dylan Spreen, Jovan, Gabe, JHS, and Jax, and the protected 27 first moved to an unprotected first for Clarkson and Kessler. What are your thoughts? I'm assuming you are also throwing in the 2029 first here, right? Because if you're just removing the top 4 protection on 2027, I don't think that's going to be enough for Kessler. But if you're saying Gabe, JHS, and Jackson 2027, remove the top 4 protection, throw in 2029, and get back Clarkson and Kessler. Off the top of my head, I don't know if the math works. I'm going to assume it does. It seems relatively close. And if that's the case, yes, I would do this in a heartbeat. Then you still have D'Lo, and you still have another first. You still have Vando, so you still have some pieces. You still have Rui. You still have pieces you can move with a first. And I think Kessler is among like the most realistic options. I think he's arguably the best. So I would. I like this trade. I would do it. Seeing daily meditation is riling the chat up. With he really wants to trade Austin. I would be surprised if he gets moved, especially with the way he's playing. But yeah, that's. I don't think they're going to trade Austin. Matthew, thank you for the super chat. Will you start videos with ho ho for the month of December? Maybe just after the Christmas game. I could do that if people want that. And so the one tricky thing with Christmas is my wife's birthday is actually on Christmas Day, and so I will be at the game in San Francisco, but I think I'm going to be flying back that night. So I got to figure out. It might be a quick stream, or it might be the next morning or something. But yeah, I can do either for the Christmas one or for a couple of the ones in December. I could do some ho-hos. Jacob Mackey, what about Jared Vanderbilt? No update on Vando. He has been with the team though. Dylan the Villain Brooks. Jovan, who's the player that the Lakers can get a perimeter defender guard that can shoot, or a wing and a backup big? Perimeter defender guard that can shoot, or a wing. I mean, wings, I think there's more options. There's Cam Johnson, Jeremy Grant, Dorian Finney-Smith. Guard, off the top of my head, I think Bruce Brown. He's kind of like a guard wing. Backup big, I think Kessler, Capella, Jakob Poeltl, Jonas Valanciunas. Those are some of the names. Nick Richards, if he gets healthy. That's kind of it. Off like for now, but I think guys are gonna become. Okay, so daily meditation, Jovan, Buha, nobody wants D'Lo / Gabe. They all want Reeves. Yes, they want Reeves, but the Lakers also want Reeves. And the problem with trading Reeves is he's on such a good contract that it's going to be really tough to get. Like that's why the Lakers have had such a high bar to trade Austin, is because one, he's really good. Two, he's on a really good contract, and I think he's not just like some throw in to match salary. Like you need to be getting a better player than, frankly, any of the players we've mentioned, like Miles Turner, Jeremy Grant, whoever you think is the best of this group that we've talked about. That's not a good enough player to get back or to give Austin up for. My wife says, "Thanks, my sweetie." You're welcome. A-Dub. No to the ho-ho, LOL. Well, thank you for the super chat to say that. Matthew says, A-Dub, don't be a Grinch. Maybe I'll work it in. I'll find a way to work it in. PNG, Lakers are 1 or 2 moves away, brother. I agree. I don't think they're that far. Now, like it depends on what you mean by away. Like I think they're 1 or 2 moves away from being a contender. I think it's still a really high bar to. I think there are very few realistic moves or trades that can get the Lakers onto like the OKC Boston level, at least from. Like I think almost any of the trades we talk about, I would still probably put a healthy Boston and healthy OKC ahead of the Lakers, but I think the Lakers have the potential to be as high as number 3 in the league pecking order. That's probably 2 moves, but I think if they can make the right moves and stay healthy, and those are two big ifs because that requires them probably trading both picks in two separate deals. That requires them staying healthy, which is far from guaranteed. They already have half their team injured. And so there's a lot of ifs that go into that. So I'm not saying it's likely, but I think with health and with the right two moves, I think this team can compete with just about anybody. I think OKC and Boston, when healthy, are at a different level, but I think Denver has not been as good as, obviously Minnesota's underachieved, Dallas is underachieved. Phoenix has looked pretty good, but I think the Lakers have some matchup advantages against them. Golden State has also looked pretty good, but I also think the Lakers have some matchup advantages over them. Cleveland has been a world beater, and maybe Cleveland puts themselves in that number 3 spot or in that conversation, and like Lakers are like the number 4 at best. But then Milwaukee's underachieved, Philly's underachieved, and then New York has been good, but not quite to the level I think we all thought. And like, I don't take the rest of the East seriously, as evident by their records. So I think it's there's a path. Again, there's a lot of ifs because they got to stay healthy, and that's been their biggest issue. I see KCP. I don't think Orlando's going to just give up on KCP. So I don't necessarily think he's going to be traded. Dipsy do. I hate that people think we need a center. A 3-and-D wing is more important. We don't have enough wing size. Any lineup is best with AD at center, so stop trying to waste the pick. I actually agree with you. I've been saying for a while that I think 3-and-D wing, someone to replace Rui in the starting lineup, is the biggest need. And then I think backup center is a need, just because I think Jackson Hayes and Christian Wood are worse than a lot of other contenders backup center. But I would even then say an upgrade over Cam. Like, I think they kind of need an upgrade at the 3 and the 2. That's I guess, and that's so I think it's a big wing and a small wing, and then center's right there as well. But if they, it also kind of depends on Christian, because I think if you have Christian and Jackson, I'm a little bit more okay with the backup center spot. If it's just one of the two, I'm not as comfortable with it. Sky Falcon, if the Wolves look to upgrade, do you think Jaden McDaniels could be moved? What would his market be? I think it's going to be high. I think it's probably going to be 2 firsts, or at least with what the Lakers have, I think they'd ask for 2 firsts, and I don't know. I think that's probably too much for me. Rob Earth, when do you think Pelinka will trade? I've been saying I think it's going to be January on the early side. Spring Magic, what are realistic expectations from Traore? Can he help? I don't think he's in a position to help yet. I thought tonight he just, again, I can only you know this if you played pickup basketball, but if you played pickup basketball, or even if you played high school basketball, if there was like a dual sport player and that player played football, or you're playing pickup basketball with a football player, you kind of know what I'm talking about. And that's sort of how Traore looks out there. He's just like knocking people over as he's running, and he just kind of has this like frenetic energy to him. And you know, if the Lakers can find a way to harness that and work on some of his skill level, I think there could be something there potentially, but I don't think I think he's more of a project, to be honest. Okay. Nas, I want to see what JJ does with Vando. Yeah, because I think going to the season, JJ was more of a Rui guy, and I'm interested to see how he feels about Vando. Ricky Burt, thank you for the super chat. I do think we need a center. However, I think a trade for someone like Dennis Schroeder would be beneficial during the playoffs. So I think Dennis is better than Gabe, but I've always felt, he is inefficient. and I think he's a little overrated defensively. Cran just tweeted out his B-ball index stuff because he's been a popular trade target for Lakers Twitter, and a lot of his stuff was like Fs and Ds. I think he's a better defender than that, but I do think he's a bit overrated. I think Gabe is the better defender between the two. I think with Dennis, sometimes he's a little bit more showy defensively, and he'll pick up 94 feet. And like sometimes if you give a lot of, it looks like you're giving effort defensively, it looks like you're being more effective. I think Gabe's a better defender than Dennis, but I think you could argue that Dennis's playmaking and offensive comfort and just skill and ability is at a higher level. He's also familiar with playing with LeBron and AD and Austin. He was obviously a big part of that Western Conference Finals run. So I would be open to Dennis, especially if it was like a Dennis Gabe swap, but I wouldn't give up a first round pick for Dennis. I think at most it would be a second. PNG, is it a hot, thank you for the super chat, is it a hot take to predict DK will average 20 points per game? Are you saying this season or in his career? In his career, I see it. This season, I think it's going to be a little tricky because Austin had a rough night offensively. You're not going to have a lot of nights with Austin scoring just 10 points. Even D'Lo had a rough night. He only had 7. Like, those guys are going to score more. Rui's going to come back. Play. Even if Rui's coming off the bench, he's going to be playing 25 plus minutes and getting a certain number of shots. So I think tonight they needed Dalton more than they will on the average night. But so I think 20 is too high for his rookie year. Could he average 15? I think so. And 15 to 20 sounds like 5 points, but it is a lot. Dylan Spreen, thank you for the super chat. Jovan saw a recent report that Lakers are front runners to land Zion if he's available at the deadline. What's your opinion on Zion being in LA? I had not seen that. I don't know if my head was in the sand. I'm going to quickly look this up on Google. I want to start also incorporating some more like visual stuff for you guys. Let me know in the chat if you want to see stuff like that in terms of like sharing my screen and different. With post game, it's a little trickier, but certainly if I do like live episodes during the week or just more live chats. Okay, so yeah, I guess he's the Vegas favorite, or Lakers are the Vegas favorite to land Zion. I mean, the Lakers are going to be the Vegas favorite to land a lot of stars. When we think of stars up, I don't think 2 first round picks is enough for Zion. That's the one thing. I think they could get more because presumably if Zion's being traded, he's healthy or there's confidence that he's going to be healthy. If it's just like a gamble, even then, like, do you really want to gamble on a guy and give away 2 picks when like he might not even be healthy? So I would assume that if there's a market for Zion and the Pelicans are looking to trade him, there's going to be a bit of a bidding war. And that's where the only real argument, in my opinion, to not trade the picks is if you think you could get a star a year or 2 or 3 from now. And that's like the only thing, but then you are basically giving up on the LeBron AD era because I think there is like a very narrow path to them winning a title or making a deep playoff run with this with this group or even with a smaller move. But like realistically, I think you have to invest the draft capital. And if you're not going to do that and you have some confidence, you have some intel that, hey, we can get star X in a year, 2 years, 3 years, and that's why you're saving the picks. Like, I get it, but then you could also be honest that you are sort of punting on this era. PNG said this season for Dalton, so I think that's too high, but look, I could be wrong. Rob Earth, can other teams claim Quincy if he continues to play at this level? I think other teams can sign him if I'm not mistaken, but if they offer him like an official contract, there's just not a lot of the 2A rules can confuse me. But I think I'm actually wrong on that. I think I'm wrong. So I think LA has his rights for through the year. Would I rather have sporadic? Would you rather have Gabe or Lonnie? I'd rather have Gabe. Now I know that's going to be upsetting for people because I know there's like a Lonnie. There's a lot of Lonnie stands. but I think I'll say this, like, I think the league and GMs are smarter than we are. And it's one thing if it's like a Quincy Oliveri, for example, or like a young guy in the G League or a young guy in a 2A. Like when you don't have the sample size, the data on that player, that's where like there's more unknown and there's less certainty. But when you have a guy who's been in the league for multiple years and the guy can't stick for various reasons, like Lonnie had the season he had with the Lakers, and then he was a minimum guy, and then he was out of the league a year later. So I think Lonnie should be on a roster, and I think Lonnie could potentially have value to a team. But I think that like I want to give the 30 teams in the NBA enough credit in their front offices of like 5 to 10 people making these decisions and evaluating talent, that if someone really thought Lonnie Walker would be the difference for them on a minimum, someone would sign him. And there's a good chance or a decent chance he gets signed at some point this season. So I'm not saying he's not going to, but I think like I'm more confident when a guy like is out of the league in a few years, or he's been in the league now for what, like 5-6 years, something like that, 6 or 7. Like if that guy for whatever reason is out of the league after that point, I feel like that's more of like a league-wide decision of just like this player is who they are, and also there's all like teams are always looking for younger guys, cheaper guys. There's also a lot of guard competition. Like I think guard is the deepest it's ever been. So I know now, would I rather have Gabe on his contract or Lonnie on a minimum? I would rather have Lonnie on a minimum. So maybe that's contextually, I will say I'd rather have Lonnie on a minimum contract than Gabe on this contract. I will say that. Okay. Well, I see what you're saying, Leon. I'm not even talking about the Lakers front office. I'm talking about front offices in general. Shabugan. It's hard to say that GMs know what they're doing when we see the answers to the GM survey every year. Not pro Lonnie, by the way. You know what? That's fair. Now, I will say sometimes they have assistants. Robert Williams is another one I'm seeing in the chat. But sometimes they have assistants fill that out, and I don't think they think that deeply about it. But, yeah. Okay. But, I mean, you're not wrong. I just would say, like, the 30 GMs have more intel than we, the public, have. We, even reporters, have. Like, it's just, so I would like to give them the benefit of the doubt, at least, that if a guy who, like, I mean, Lonnie's clearly talented, and I think, again, he belongs in the league, but it's just, if that guy, for whatever reason, can't get a contract, like, there's probably a reason we don't know that they're lower on him for whatever reason. Ryan Rich, what's the most surprising team and the most disappointing team? Surprising team for me, I'm going to pull up the standings just to make sure I don't forget anybody. So I would say, I mean, the biggest surprise to me is Cleveland going 14-0. Like I thought they'd be good. I thought they'd be a top 4 seed in the East. I didn't see like potential 60 win like juggernaut season from this Cleveland team. So I would say like that's the biggest surprise. Now, if I want to not pick like the obvious number 1 team in the East right now, or I still think Boston's number 1, but like you get what I mean. They're the 1 seed. I mean, Detroit there at 6-8 has been better than expected. Charlotte at 5-7 has been better than expected. In the West, I would say Golden State at 10-2 has been the biggest surprise. Houston at 9-4 has also been a pretty big surprise. And if we want to say disappointments, I think that there's a race there where Milwaukee 4-9, I think has probably been the biggest disappointment overall because they've been relatively healthy. They've largely had their guys. And I know Middleton's been banged up and like they've had some role player injuries and stuff, but they've had Giannis and in most of their rotation, and the fact that they're 4-9 and have lost to some bad teams. Philly at 2-10, but like Embiid's been out, Maxi's been out, Paul George has been out. He was on a minutes restriction. Like Philly has a little bit more of an excuse to be 2-10. And then in the West, I would say Dallas at 6-7 is probably the biggest disappointment. New Orleans at 4-10, but like they've been so banged up that, again, I think this version of New Orleans is one of the worst teams in the league, like easily. So I would probably say it's between Minnesota at 7-6 or Dallas at 6-7. Those are the two teams that were in the conference finals last year, and they're right now 9th and 10th in the West. So if you are nailing me down to, I'll give you one answer in each conference. I'd say Cleveland's the biggest surprise in the East. Milwaukee's the biggest disappointment in the East. I would say Golden State is the biggest surprise in the West, and Dallas is the biggest disappointment in the West. Okay, I'm going to go. We're at 120, an hour 25. We're going to go 5 more minutes just to. Lego Tortoise Builder. Jovan, have you given up on Max yet? No. I continue to hold my Max stock. If anything, I talked to my portfolio manager, and we are looking to purchase more Max Christie stock. I think that Max. I also think LA's done a better job of putting him in lineups where he just doesn't have to handle the ball. I think they wanted that to be a thing. It has not been a thing in terms of like that part of his game developing yet at the NBA level. I think we saw flashes of it in Summer League last summer, but I don't think he's at the point where you want him handling the ball, running pick and rolls. I don't think he's quite at like the secondary ball handler, playmaker level that they were hoping. But if his job is defend the best opposing perimeter wing, rebound, shoot when open, attack closeouts, find the open guy, I think Max can do all those things at a high level, or relatively high level within the realistic expectations of just he's a 21-year-old in year 3. But like I think Max can be an 8th or 9th man this season. I would say like expectations have gone down a little bit for him for sure, but I'm not giving up on him. I don't know how to say your name, but I appreciate the question. Jonas versus Robert Williams, 100%, but there's the big injury concern. Tally Khalifa, just tuning in now. Am I crazy to think that Walker Kessler might be worth 1 first-round pick, by the way? No, I agree with you. I think he is worth 1 first-round pick. Daily meditation. You, as the chat has said, you do need to meditate. You're entitled to your opinion, but you enjoy life. Take a deep breath. This is a fun one. Puppy Chow 302. Who do you think has the higher ceiling, AR or Connect? And there's some similarities here beyond them both being white guys. They both entered the league at 23. So they both were on the older side as rookies. Oh, that's tough. I think it depends like what that's a really tough one. I love to know what you guys think in the chat, but I know like, so Dalton's a rookie and there's going to be a certain level of like gloss or sheen to a rookie. It's the shiny new toy, but I think so as a scorer, I think Dalton has the higher ceiling. As a shooter, I think Dalton has the higher ceiling. I think Austin has the higher ceiling as a playmaker, as a ball handler, as a passer. I think Austin makes more winning plays and has like more of those role player intangibles. And I think Austin is a better defender and typically a better rebounder, though tonight he had a rough, or not rough, but like he only had 2 rebounds. Dalton had 7. I want to lean Austin, but in terms of like, because ceiling, we're talking like upside, like best scenario, right? So I'm seeing so. Oh man. Okay. We are back. I did not actually I'm catching up on the chat. I did not I wasn't charging my computer because I didn't one, I didn't think it would die, and two, I didn't think I was gonna go for an hour and a half, but I appreciate you all for rocking with me. I will go. I've already gone a little bit over, but that was partly because this died. Still 730 people on here. I really appreciate you guys. We are so back, as Sporadic said. Let's go. We'll go 10 more minutes. You know what? I do. So I'm on a. It's 1:15 here in New Orleans. I'm on a 6 a.m. flight back to LA. So I'm not gonna probably pulling an all nighter. But let's. Oh. Do I have Lonnie stands coming after me? Is that a thing? Barath Ram, hey Jovan, JJ mentioned that he has a defensive scheme that revolves around Vando when he gets back. Any idea on what the defensive scheme might be? We already saw a 3-2 zone with 80 at the top. I wonder if it's going to be a box and one where Vando's defending whoever's the elite ball handler, perimeter scorer, whatever, and Lakers are zoning up, sort of in like almost kind of like sort of like horns near the elbows with the two guards. So I mean, it's kind of close to a 3-2, but I think in that scenario, you're almost doing like, you got the two low guys who are the two low men who are kind of in between that zone of the blocks and the corners. That's their area. You got the two guys near the elbows who are in that area, top the arc, and then also the wings, and then you have Vando just locked into. I think it can work against some teams. Like I think Minnesota is a team it could probably work against where they do go ISO heavy with Ant. Like teams that like to ISO a lot, maybe Dallas, but they could bend and then break your defense with the shooting. So yeah. But my guess would be box and one. Maybe they do a 2-3 zone with Vando and 80 at the top, and like Jackson, Christian, or one of the Christians at center, and then like LeBron, or you could get pretty big and funky with it. Jake D. Fiore, keep hustling, Jovan. You're the GOAT. I appreciate that, Jake. Thank you. Dark Galaxy, Jovan. You didn't say my name, but I'm in my head. You said my name. Who are you the closest with on the team? I mean, I would say that the two guys I had on the podcast so far, Austin and Max, are definitely two of the guys I'm closer with. But 80, I've had a fret, like, I would say in general, the media hasn't interacted too much with Bronny, but we have a positive relationship, and we both went to USC. Dalton gotten friendlier with, and those would be the first guys that come to mind. It's a little tricky because I mean, again, half these guys are injured, so like I've not been. Christian's been at the home games, but like have not been around him a lot. Actually, was there for Christian Koloko's debut in Memphis and was able to talk to him a bit. So I would say it's ongoing. Like the relationships, sometimes you talk more with guys, sometimes you talk less. I would say for sure, like Max, Austin, and 80 are probably the three I'm closest with. Who do the Lakers prefer between Jonas and Robert? My understanding would be Robert, but again, he'd have to be healthy. Nas, Jovan, I keep saying some of these questions start with my name. Have you talked to JJ about playing bigger? A little bit. I think right now that they've been at a size disadvantage with the front court health, so that's kind of been why they played small. Like I don't think they want to play like 4-guard lineups with Dalton at the 4 or Cam at the 4 as we've seen over the last like few games. So I think it's more personnel limitation right now than anything. Kane Norris, in parentheses LAL Prime. What do you think about D'Lo's decision making? At times it looks like he forces the action leading to a silly turnover or a bad shot. Yeah, I think D'Lo's decision making is largely good. He's typically a low turnover guy. I think my bigger issue with D'Lo is typically the shot selection. I think that, like, I'll use the Dalton Knecht, the against Memphis when he was on that heater, and then D'Lo takes the back-to-back kind of through the legs dribble step back 3, and it was just like, it felt very out of rhythm within the offense. And again, Dalton was just like on this incredible heater, and I felt like the right thing would have been to feed him, even if it was like a DHO into, faking like he was about to, cut and then veering back, screening for Dalton, something like that. Just like keep Dalton involved offensively. So I would say, like, D'Lo does make tough shots, so it's a tricky balance there where like you want to empower guys to take tough shots, and he made a lot of tough shots last season, but I think his judgment and his feel for like when to take those shots has been worse this season than it was last season. And like the worst version of D'Lo is a guy who's getting targeted and is compromising your defense, but then also is struggling against ball pressure and like sort of forcing up shots. Like, for example, he did in like Denver in the first round series. A lot of that series, it was just like he's forcing up these contested shots that he's not making. And like he's someone who really struggles with ball pressure. And so, but like overall, I think, it's been a big adjustment for him coming off the bench. Like he had 5 assists tonight. I think he still continues to make well, and he's, I would still say the second best passer on the team behind LeBron. But I think one key development here is like the Lakers are no longer dependent on D'Lo. They can still win without him. They've figured out how to restructure the offense and the rotation where if D'Lo misses a game or even if they need to reduce his minutes, it's not like crippling to the team the way it would have been last year. So that's been my biggest positive to him moving to the bench is I don't think they don't need him as much. Like I still think if he's going to be on the roster, they need him to an extent. But I hope you understand like the nuance of what I'm trying to say. Sporadic, do you think the Lakers switch too easily when the other team is mismatch hunting late in the game? Yes, I do. Now, I think they've done a better job of swarming and rotating. Like the Kevin Durant one is just, I go back and watch that one, and it's like, I don't understand what they were doing. Like Gabe Vincent switching out to Kevin Durant and then like not sending aggressive enough help. Like you need to force KD to pass the ball. I thought they did a better job tonight, for example, with Ingram. He hit some tough shots. He still had 8 assists. He passed, like, Ingram's gotten much better, I think, over the last couple of years at handling double teams, his decision-making, his playmaking. But I thought, like all things considered, 32 points on 23 shots. It's not terribly efficient. And, I thought they did much better against Ingram. That also could be like Ingram's limitations as like a number one guy, but also some of the teammates he has. Leon G. Oh, first off, I saw you said you're in Europe right now, 7 a.m. So shout out to you watching in Europe. Vando can be offensively neutral. It transforms our whole team identity. Couldn't agree more. I think the challenge is getting him to offensively neutral because I think he's not been offensively neutral so far in his time in LA until like the last week and a half before he got injured. Barath Ram, hey Jovan. The horns action seems to be the Lakers' flow set. They get into their offensive action mostly through horns, as JJ said, his pod because of the versatility. Could you do a breakdown? I like that idea. I think you've suggested some breakdowns before, and I mean the rip screen. So that's basically where they're in horns. They pass it to the elbow. Typically, it's going to be they could do it with LeBron or AD, but if that's where it'll usually be like LeBron's dribbling the ball up, Austin's at one elbow, AD's at the other elbow, and then they will give AD, if it's LeBron bringing it up, it's usually they'll give it to AD, Austin sets a back screen, and then Austin can pop out for a 3. LeBron gets that cut, and sometimes that miscommunication there leads to a LeBron back cut for a layup. Then if AD hits Austin, it could be a dribble handoff. It could be a quick pass to him, and then that goes into a pick and roll. And then they could also go into stack action, which is like a pick and roll with a back screen for the screener. So, and that's where you see like AD get a lob, LeBron get back cuts. It's often in some variation of that. So yeah, I think that their horn sets have been pretty consistently successful, and they ran a lot of horns under Frank Vogel, and that was like some of the bread and butter of the offense. But I could do a deeper dive on that. Dark Galaxy, have you golfed with Austin? I've not. I'm not. I'd like to learn to golf because it seems to be a good networking thing, but I don't. James, never got the notification. I'm sorry, James, but you are here now, and you around the 1:30 mark will get a nice surprise of the screen going black for like 2 minutes. Dylan Neville and Brooks, Jovan, do you think LeBron's motivated this year because he's playing with his son? I don't think that's the only reason. I think LeBron loves basketball. I think LeBron cares about his legacy, and I think he wants to win a championship and compete and keep breaking records and keep being great. But that's certainly been an additional motivating factor. And I think you've seen a different level of seriousness with LeBron that he's typically keeps things light, and he's talked about like he's kind of a big kid, and that's sort of his vibe all the time. But I think you've seen an added layer of like mentorship and seriousness from him. Leon G, with how turnover happy Braun has been, I could argue D'Lo has been our best passer. You could if if you want to say from like an assist to turnover ratio, sure. I would still say like LeBron can make passes that really only like Jokic can make, maybe Luka, but it's like LeBron is a special passer, and I think he makes some head scratching decisions, and he's had too many turnovers the last couple of games. But I think he's Lego Tortoise Builder. Jovan, will Dalton be how Larry Bird was for the Celtics? Let's pump the brakes on Dalton. I like Dalton, but comparing him to Larry Bird, seeing no Vando update. Sorry. Sky Falcon 5, do you think we can hold down top 4 until a January trade? Yes, I do. I do think the Lakers could be a top 4 team. Seating wise. Now, longer term, I think 5 is probably more realistic with this group, besides, them doing a trade. James, you and Trev should do another show together. I think I'm going to be doing Lakers Nation soon. Lego Tortoise Builder, Jovan, when Rui and Reddish come back, should Dalton stay in the starting lineup over Reddish? I would keep him. I've talked about it. I think he's going to move back to the bench. I would be more open to him starting if Vando's in there, and it's him, Vando, and Austin. I think the problem, if you go him over Reddish, you're now recreating a lot of the same problems you had with D'Lo, not necessarily from a ball handling role perspective, but defensively, Dalton's bigger, but I would not say he's like much better than D'Lo defensive. I think he's better, but not much. And I still think you have some, if it's like Rui, LeBron, Austin, Dalton, that's your perimeter group. I think you have some problems with the perimeter defense. K Norris, personal question. How's the Achilles doing? And are you healed up yet? Yes, I'm healed up. It's been 13 months exactly to the day since I tore my Achilles, and pretty much back to normal. It does stiffen up occasionally. I think also like flying doesn't help. I've played basketball once. I plan to play basketball soon more, but I'm also a little scared, to be honest. I like, it was just such a bummer. I wish I was streaming and had my channel back then. It would have been interesting to talk about, but like I was in a dark place for a while. I missed a couple of weeks. I stopped traveling for a bit. Couldn't walk, could barely shower, could barely move. It was pretty, it happened right before the season, so it was pretty tough to deal with. So I've tried to block it out of my mind, but certainly been a big part of my life for like the past year. Ray, you need a board like Sean Davis, or I wasn't sure if you were saying you need a beard like Sean Davis. For some reason, I read it that way. I was gonna say I can't grow a beard, but a board like JJ, maybe. IS Jovan, thoughts on Chris Boucher? I like Chris Boucher as like a backup big in a certain role. I think he can shoot. He can be that type of microwave. Like he can get hot and hit threes, score for you. He can block shots. Not a good rebounder. Not a good post defender. Pretty light. I wouldn't want him as my primary backup 5, but again, as an option, wouldn't give up a first round pick. That'd be more of like a second. Like I don't know his contract off the top of my head. Like JHS in a second, sure, something like that. And even that like top 40 protected second, something like that. Hako, what's going on with the Braun and D'Lo miscommunication on offense lately? I have noticed that. It's been a little weird. I'm not quite sure. I will try and dig into that. But yeah, it seems like they have not been on the same page at times. James, best city for food so far this year, Toronto. That was the best meal. By the way, for those, we got 769 people in here. I appreciate all of you. I will be having, it's been a little tricky timing-wise, especially with trying to balance writing with travel, and then also the channel and the podcast. I do have a vlog coming from the 5-game road trip. Now you might not want to relive much of the basketball for the 5-game road trip, but it will be like a behind the scenes on an NBA road trip, what it's like to travel, some behind the scenes stuff. So be on the lookout for that. Probably not, maybe coming to, I mean, it's done. I've edited it. I just needed to do the voiceover. So maybe tomorrow, or tonight, I guess. Yeah. Matthew Jovan, do you think the Lakers have enough assets to get Ingram? Would you want him? I'm skeptical how he would fit. I think it would take at least both firsts, and he's probably worth that. I'm with you though. I think there's a way. Like I would like him more than like a Levine, right? And even for the 2 picks, like I'd rather give up 2 picks and get Ingram than no picks and get Levine personally, because I think he's a much better. He's bigger. It would like he could kind of slot in as like a better version of Rui. Grant, there's differences there in terms of. Rui's a better, he is more of a power guy than Ingram, but I think the ISO heavy nature, while I think he's improved as a playmaker, like I don't love the fit there with LeBron and AD. Ideally, I think if they get a 3rd star, it's more of like a guard, unless it's like Giannis or something. But even then, I think there's some fit. Like you figure it out, but there would obviously be some overlap with like Giannis, AD, and LeBron. But again, you would figure that out, or Jokic, like whatever big you want to throw in there, you got to figure that out. But I'd probably pass on Ingram, but I could be convinced. Jonathan Rubio, when is Oliveri get a shot? I don't know. I asked about it pregame and I was shot down. So Matthew, were you playing pickup with McMenamin? Not when I tore my Achilles, but I have played with him. This has to be a new stream record length, right? Yes. Well, honestly, look, like I've seen there's some people that stream for like 8 hours a day, and I'm like, I don't know if I could do that, but no, why not go for 2 hours? I got time to kill. Lego Tortoise Builder. Jovan, can you do a Q&A live stream on non-game days? Yeah, I've been meaning to. It's just the tricky thing with the NBA schedule is like it's the every other day nature can be a lot where like most game nights tonight I'm not writing, but most game nights I'm writing and streaming and then editing that for the audio version, and then and then typically I'm up till 3-4 a.m. Then I try to get my 8 hours of sleep. So now I'm sleeping till like 11, 12, and then it kind of pushes my day back. And then maybe they have practice, or maybe I'm traveling, and like there's just a lot of things that go into like the daily schedule. But I think I want to start streaming on non-game days at least once a week. And I'm just trying to kind of figure out like what day that makes sense. It's honestly probably a different day each week, because no week is the same in terms of the game schedule, the travel schedule, etc. Let's see. Yeah, Barath Ram, like and subscribe, guys. We need more of these. We do. I'd love to do more of these, and you guys liking and subscribing helps with that. I asked Jovan, would you consider doing a membership program like Lakers Nation? Maybe at some point. I don't think I'm there quite yet. I want to keep building this out, and but I've considered, what that would look like, and yeah, I want to keep building this out long term. So I'm trying to make sure I'm doing the right things. Dark Galaxy, Jovan, are you excited for the new court against the Magic? Yes, I am. I think it's going to be cool to see an alternate court. Michael Brazeno, what do you think of Lonzo Ball? I think he's a perfect fit. Yeah, I mean, I think he's got to stay healthy. That's the biggest thing with Lonzo. He's got to stay healthy. But if he does, I think depending on the price too, I'd be interested. Ernesto, where are you? I'm in New Orleans. I asked thoughts on our record next 15 games. So I already did the next 6. But if we go, okay, Jazz, Magic, Nuggets, at Suns, at Spurs, back-to-back, Thunder, at Jazz, at Timberwolves, at Heat, at Hawks. I just booked that road trip. Home Blazers, at Kings, at Kings. Let's see. This is 6, 9, 12. Then home Pistons, then at Warriors. So you're saying through Christmas, what's the Lakers' record going to be? I would guess... I think 7. I'm going to say they're going to go 10-5 over the next 15. There's some pretty tough games in there. Magic at home, Nuggets at home, at Suns, even at Spurs back-to-back. Thunder, then at Minnesota, at Miami, at Kings twice, at Golden State on Christmas. So I think they go 10-5 over the next 15. But let me know in the chat what you guys think. Dark Galaxy wish list, longer length vlogs, about 8 minutes or a tad bit longer. Yeah, this next one's going to be like 7.5 or so. Leon G, you need to sleep. Early flight tomorrow, man. Yeah, I do need to sleep. So I will. Well, we're at 1:55. Let's go 2 hours. Let's break the record. Although I already broke the record, and then yeah. Count Zurich. Do you think LeBron could take Jake Paul? I think he would need to train, but if you gave LeBron a proper ramp up I'm not a boxing expert, so I don't know. Is that 2 months, 3 months, 4 months? If you give LeBron 3 to 4 months, I think he could beat Jake Paul. He has a major size advantage over Jake Paul, and Jake, to my recollection, has not really fought anybody with that. I mean, obviously not knowing LeBron's size, but like even typically it's like he's bigger or they're about the same size. So I mean, LeBron's got what 6-7 inches on him, and another. I don't even know what he was fighting at, but I would guess at least 40 to 60 pounds. So, yeah, I think LeBron would. With again, training. James, the longer the better. Your content's great. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. Tally, Khalifa, Jovan, who do you have coming out of the West groups for the NBA Cup? All right, I haven't memorized it. I have the Lakers coming out of their group because I think, especially with the Chet and KD injuries, they should win it, in my opinion, if they take care of business. Like, they should beat the Jazz. At Phoenix is the toughest game for sure. And then home versus OKC coming out of Thanksgiving, I guess. But okay, West Group B, OKC, Phoenix, Lakers, Jazz, Spurs. I think the Lakers, assuming they stay healthy throughout this stretch or get healthier, but like no LeBron or AD injury, I think they should win. West, and I don't know I know some of these teams everyone's played one game at least, so I don't know the records off the top of my head. It's Timberwolves, Clippers, Kings, Blazers, Rockets. That's a weird one. Rockets are playing really good. I might still say Timberwolves, but that's tough between Timberwolves and Rockets. And then C is Denver, Dallas, New Orleans, Golden State, Memphis. I'm going to pick Golden State. So I guess if you held me to it, I would go Minnesota, Lakers, Golden State. But I forgot already. I know Minnesota and Sacramento played. I forgot who won that. And then East, I'm not going to read through all that. I'll just say East A, I'll pick the Knicks. East B, I will pick. Ooh, this is a pretty bad group. I guess I'll pick the Heat. And then EC, I'll pick. Well, it's going to be Cleveland, Boston, whoever wins that one. I think it's in Boston, so I'll go Boston. Yeah, I'll go Yeah. Okay. Those are the 6, but I know some of these games have played already, so maybe I'm way off. Jay Hoodie, bro, you're still on live? Yeah. We're My wife says, I feel like there's a direct relationship between the length of your live and the chance you miss your flight tomorrow. Uh, if I don't go to sleep, I can't miss my flight. Well, I can, but the odds are lower, right? All right, man. Okay. I'm seeing all this. I don't know why people are arguing over the Austin trade stuff. It just feels like an unnecessary argument. Don't know when Vando is coming back. I don't even know if the Lakers know. Jeremy Jasinski, Jovan, you're a man of the people. I appreciate that. I try. I mean, I do it for you guys with the, whether I write something, whether I do a podcast, whether I do a video, like I want it to be consumed by as many people as possible. I want to bring value to as many people as possible. I want to bring insight. And this is fun interacting with all of you and building out this community. Late night gang, as I like to say. I gotta start with the merch with that. I'd be consider merch might be the first step before like a membership, but I'd also want it to be like high quality stuff. I would never like just create something just to create it. Tali Khalifa, thanks for the great content, Jovan, followed by Jeremy Jovan, aka only 10 more minutes. Gotta love it. Yeah. Oh, we already passed the 2-hour mark. Okay. So I didn't watch, but I hope Max played well again. Played well defensively. Brandon Ingram hit some tough shots on him. Had a huge tip out to seal the game. Struggled offensively. 1 for 6, 0 for 3 on threes. But Max's shot is still a work in progress. But Alex Quincy getting called up anytime soon? I don't think so. K-Dot, brother, are you getting enough sleep? Just want you to be healthy, my guy. All love. I'm going to be sleeping all day tomorrow, so I will try and get my 8 hours. James, I think we both got married around the same time. I got married September 7th. So if it's around then yeah. But congrats on getting married. That's awesome. So you keep asking about backup centers. I would say, I mean, Walker, it depends if you consider Walker Kessler a backup center, but I would put him up there. Robert Williams, Valanciunas. It's the names that have been out there already. Call it a whole lot of Buha. I like that. Duo Maxwell Kessler isn't much better than Hayes and he's slower. I think he's basically averaging a double-double and 3 blocks. So I would disagree with you on the Matthew. I missed your super chat. What did you say? Oh. Okay. Sorry. Jovan, off topic. You ever had the opportunity to interact with Zach Lowe? I really miss his pod. So fun fact from tonight. Zach Lowe was at the game, and I actually ran into him while I was walking to the game. So we had a nice little chat on the way to the game, chatted a couple times at the game. And, I don't want to share anything or overshare anything. I want to respect, but he seems to be in pretty good spirits and looks good. And, I can't wait. Whatever he does next, I cannot wait until he's back, and can't wait to read him again. Can't wait to listen to the Low Post. I told him how much he's meant to me personally and my career. And so that was a cool little surprise that he was at the game, and he was also there yesterday. I think he tweeted about that. I don't know if he tweeted tonight about the game, but yeah. Jeremy, can you tell if any of the players are more friendly with you than other reporters? Yeah, I mean it's a player by player basis. I think every player has a different relationship with every reporter, and it. So yeah, I mean there's some players I'm closer with, some players other people are closer with. It really just depends. Pugzilla, Quincy needs an episode, bro. Yeah, I'd actually love to have him on to talk to him. I see your question, K Norris. I've not heard anything on Pop, unfortunately. Dylan, you said I missed your super chat. Oh. D'Lo, Gabe, Seawood plus 2 firsts for DeJounte Alvarado. Well, DeJounte's out for the year, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure he's out for the year, right? Let's see. Or no, he's what? No. Okay, my mistake. Who's out? Why did I think he was out for the year? He's not out for the year. DeJounte, I like DeJounte. I mean, I like DeJounte. I would have done D'Lo and 2 firsts last deadline for him. So I guess with this deal, I'd be like the one thing is New Orleans would have to really pull the plug on it, but I don't think New Orleans is there yet. Shamilu Weiss, yo, AD needs to get on your podcast. I agree. We need to make that happen. Justine Severo, Jovan on fire. I appreciate you. I mean, this is also the biggest audience we've had, so I appreciate you all for rocking with me. Barath Ram, any prediction on who the surprising seller would be at the trade deadline this season? So I've been saying New Orleans, which is also where the DeJounte stuff is interesting. But looking at it, I mean, I think some team in the East is going to, obviously not Cleveland, Boston, Orlando, New York. I think those teams are safe. Does Milwaukee blow it up? I mean, like that's the one that's like seismic of like, does Giannis become available even on like a smaller scale? Like they've been interested in trading, but I think Brook Lopez would be someone I'd be interested in for a first if I'm the Lakers. Philly, what does it like? Those are a couple like bigger ones in terms. I mean, Indy's one where if Indy goes south, do they try and trade Turner? Miami with Jimmy Butler in the West. I mean, I don't really see Minnesota pulling the plug just because Ant is still not even in his prime yet, and like I think you're trying to build around him. Memphis is always at risk of going south, but I don't think they're going to trade Bane or Morant or Jackson. Dallas, but I guess that like the Clippers, that does Kawhi become available? If I had to pick right now, I would say New Orleans is like the most, probably like the most. New Orleans and Milwaukee are the two teams that like I think could really change the landscape of the league if they pull the plug on this season. And New Orleans seems to be headed that way. Milwaukee's not quite there, but they're starting to get there. Jeremy, so they actually started rocking. You're saying they're rocking the god awful pandas. Do they not know how played out they are? What's funny is I would actually say like they're better than. I mean, like, so if we're going with like a generic white and black shoe that's going to match the all black, because they're wearing those like black sweaters with like the black joggers. And so theoretically, they want a shoe that's going to match that everyone can wear. I think Dunks are at least comfortable. I guess you could go with like all white forces with a black swoosh. You could go with like Air Max 90s. I mean, like, I don't really see Minnesota pulling the plug on this season. And New Orleans seems to be headed that way. You could go with like Air Max 90s You could go with, I don't know, like but I mean, they're going to go Nike. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what other you could go. Like, are like kill shots better? I mean, I think it's specifically, it'd be cool if they were wearing like white and purple dunks, or just basically any combination other than pandas. They have been wearing, they have a new white leather sneaker that the group has been wearing. They've worn a couple times recently. So yeah. Big Baby Sports, shout out to Big Baby. Make sure you guys check out his channel too. Hit the like button and subscribe, everyone. Appreciate that, Big Baby. Leon G, good point. People need to remember that New Orleans would rather trade with anyone else but us. Another team that's like that is Chicago. Chicago does not want to trade with the Lakers. K. Dot, would you let Dalton start and Rui come off the bench to give it some extra scoring punch? I mean, I think you could argue Dalton's the extra scoring punch, though, right now. I think Rui's going to continue starting, but I wouldn't be surprised if at some point it flips. Sporadic, what would your trade offer be for Giannis? Everything. Everything. Like, I mean, anything other than AD and LeBron. I mean, I know this is a wild thought. Like, would the Lakers consider trading LeBron for Giannis, given the rest of the career he has in front of him? I don't think they're going to trade LeBron, just to be clear. But I would. Anything outside of AD and LeBron is on the table. D'Lo counts Eric D'Lo, Rui 2 first for Ham. Need to give him another chance. I'm not even going to respond to that, although I just did. Barath Ram, do you have your own secret collection? Yeah. So I'm more of like a classic guy where I have like a lot of 1s, 3s, 4s, 11s, Jordans. So I'm pretty much a Jordan guy, and I like the classic. So I got like shadow 1s, shattered backboard 1s. I got the black and gold. I got 2 versions of black and gold 1s. I got black and pink. I probably got like 50-ish pairs of shoes, and most of them were Jordans. That could be its own show. Doggy's right. LeBron can't be traded even if they wanted. LeBron can't be traded this year, but it was more so like they're not going to trade LeBron anyway, even if he could be. I was more so just throwing it out there, like if that was even possible, would the Lakers consider that? But they're not going to. I'm seeing all the teams that don't want to trade with the Lakers. Yeah, I mean, there's honestly a lot of teams that no one wants to be the Memphis Grizzlies from 2007. Or I guess it was 2008 when they made the trade, but that helped the Lakers get back to the finals. Big Baby Sports, favorite music to listen to before games. So I'm big Drake fan, which I know is already, some people are Kendrick. You know, that's its own thing, but I'm a big Drake guy. I don't really listen to music before games. I just listen to a bunch of podcasts. So I'm catching up on NBA podcasts. I have some like lifestyle or tech podcasts. I've been a little bit more into politics the last 2-3 months. So I probably listen to like 4 to 5 podcasts a day, and like I'm constantly just traveling with podcasts and watching podcasts on YouTube, all that, like everything. Ibrahim, who do you think is the GOAT, LeBron or MJ? I've said this before multiple times, but I think LeBron is the GOAT. I think you can argue that MJ had the higher peak relative to like I know Jason Temp has talked about this, and I think we see it largely the same. And he talked about it recently on X. I think like from a peak perspective, you can make the case it was Jordan, but I think the longevity and like LeBron, I also think there's a like a biological element or like an evolutionary element to it of just like LeBron's bigger. He's could just as fast, if not faster. Could jump as high. He was a better passer. Statistically, he's a better shooter. I think it's close, but defensively, I think he could defend fours and fives in a way that Jordan couldn't. But I think it's close. Like I don't. Yeah, I know you can. I know everyone has their opinion and they're not going to change their mind, but I think LeBron's the GOAT. Count Zurich. Do you listen to any comedy podcasts? I guess it depends on what you would consider a comedy podcast. I like Schultz and I like Flagrant. I typically consume it more in clips, similar to Brilliant Idiots with him and Charlemagne. That would probably be, and then I'll consume a lot of clips on like TikTok as well. But comedy, I would say not as much. It's typically, maybe I could use some comedy, but yeah, it's typically more, yeah. RV14, Late Night with Jovan Buha. Okay, in all seriousness, we are going to, we will wrap at 2:20. GV, are you Jewish? No, I'm half Serbian, half Puerto Rican. So I guess technically I'm half Orthodox Christian and half Catholic. But no, I'm not Jewish. Ray, would you do a live guest? Yeah. I was considering having Anthony Irwin on last night, but it wasn't going to work out. And then Trevor's with his family. Otherwise, I would have loved to have him on. Leon G, Serbo Rican, exactly. Barath Ram, any Lakers content creators that you like? Yeah, I mean, I think you guys have seen the ones that I've had on. I think Trevor, Sean, Anthony, Jason Timpf is more of a national guy with his show, but he does a lot of Lakers stuff. I don't want to forget anybody. I mean, the beat writers I work with, Dave, Dan, Kobe, Raj, Daniel with Lakers Nation. Like, there's a lot of people that in terms of like Twitter, like Guru is hilarious. So like there's a lot of people. I feel like I'm probably forgetting someone and I'm going to feel really bad. I'm trying not to. But those are at least like content creators more so. Those are the ones that pop on, like, come to mind. Luke Murphy, Jordan's peak easily better than LeBron's peak. I'm not going to argue that. I think like Miami and Cleveland LeBron, especially like second shift, you can make 2016 LeBron, 2018 LeBron, 2012 or 2013 LeBron. That's right there, I think, with Jordan's peak. But if you say Jordan had the better peak, I'm not going to fight you. Okay. Yes. And our Locked On Lakers Rose. Yes. Kamenetsky's are great. That was one, and Alan Sliwa. I knew I was forgetting people. Barth Ram, Guru the Go to Twitter, not gonna lie. He's Kadeem Gaines, what's up, man? Yo, would you have any idea of why guys like Dennis Smith Jr. and Markelle Fultz are unsigned? Is there a stigma or something? I think either of those guys would be nice in LA if Gabe/D'Lo are moved. I mean, to be honest, I think if Gabe or D'Lo is moved, I think Quincy Oliveri has to be the guy that moves up. I think Quincy's ready. I think with Dennis, with Fultz, wasn't he dealing with an injury, I want to say, over the summer? I could be wrong. I thought he was banged. He's had like tendonitis. I think with Fultz, it's more of an injury thing. and there's some concern with that. With Dennis Smith, I think it's an offensive thing. Although, I mean, I think defensively he's really good. Okay, yeah. Well, so RV. Okay, so yeah. See, I knew I was missing a bunch of people. I mean, Kranjis. I've already talked about Kranjis 2 or 3 times on this stream. So I've had Kranjis on a couple times. He's like arguably the smartest person covering the Lakers. So yeah, Pete. I would also say Darius. Like Pete. I mean, LFR is a must listen. I listen. I had Pete on. So I mean, those are right up there for like the best people covering the Lakers, from like an analytical X's and O's data, all that stuff. Sean Davis, I mentioned Sean, but yeah. So I again, it's 2 a.m. here. I'm on a back-to-back. Did not get much sleep. We've got on 2.5 hours. So yeah. But yeah, drop whoever. Again, I want to give a shout out to Big Baby in the chat. Favorite team to follow other than the Lakers. I personally feel Charlotte has been fun to watch with LaMelo being healthy. Yeah, I would say this season. I mean, I try to follow everybody. I guess if you're saying like favorite team to watch, I mean Golden State. Once I know Warriors and Lakers fans got their beef, but like Golden State has been really fun to watch. Cleveland, Dallas has had some fun games. I mean, I'm partly because I'm half Serbian. Like Jokic is probably my favorite non-Laker to watch. So I would throw Jokic in there. Yeah. So those are, I would say, like, I do lean more West Coast as well, just because I think the West is much better than the East. But Scott Falcon 5 Jovan got more energy than the Lakers today. Honestly, I was so like, I'm not gonna lie, I was like a little nervous for this stream because I was like, I don't even know if I could last 30 minutes with how tired I'm feeling, but here we are, 2.5 hours in. Let's see. Okay, I have not missed a super chat, so I wanted to make sure. Oh, I did. Sorry, Glenn. I apologize. Love the show. If Vando comes without missing a beat, do you see him starting? Yes, I see Vando eventually starting, but I think it's going to be at least a few games. Ray, go to sleep before your wife yells at you. All right. Well, I'll answer this final. I'll answer 2 questions. Then that's that. I will go to sleep. So Jeremy says, Jovan, do you enjoy watching games more on TV in real life? It depends on the angle. And that's like, I understand it's a very first world, like problem type complaint, but there are certain arenas where the angle is just not great for watching the game. And like, I understand I'm getting paid to be there. I'm, watching basketball, not even for free, getting paid to watch basketball. So it's by no means a complaint of like watching a game and being paid to do it. But there are certain, like Memphis, it's amazing. You are basically center court, second row, and you're actually more on the Lakers side. So you see their huddles, you hear things, and it's like this immersive experience. Some arenas, you're like Milwaukee, you're like in the corner and you're like kind of above the second section. So it's like certain parts on the closer court, the court's being blocked by the basket. And like, again, first world problem, but if I'm trying to watch everything and consume it and take notes and stuff, and that can kind of mess that up. So in that instance, there are certain arenas where I'd almost rather just watch the game on the broadcast and from like a consumption absorbing information. And every time I will say, like, anytime I rewatch a game, there's always things I pick up on, not just because I'm rewatching it, but it's like, oh, because of the angle I was at, I didn't see, like, I thought this play, player X covered 10 ground of feet and it was actually like 14 ground of feet or whatever, like with a rotation or whatever, or a drive or whatever. So I would say actually, I will say actually consuming and absorbing it, TV is better than in person, unless you have like that sweet spot, like basically kind of center court. Like for me, there's a big difference between watching a game on the baseline and the sideline. I much prefer sideline than baseline. And actually our home games at crypto.com were on the baseline, and we're technically, like, I would say we're technically second row, although there's like a big gap between the court side and us. So it's probably more like fourth or fifth row, but so that's good for like hearing stuff and seeing like the physicality within the game. But then there are times where like on often plays like near the Lakers bench, the stanchion and the basket are like blocking half the court. So whatever's happening, especially if it's like a late game situation, we can barely see half the court. And I know, again, I want to keep prefacing out all this with like first world situation, but I would actually say, honestly, if I'm trying to like really consume it and absorb it, I would say TV is better. Bloodhound, I don't speak Spanish. That was supposed to be the last question, but Doggy, what's your favorite shoe brand? I would say Jordan. Tam the pessimist. Damn, Jovan, I thought you were going to do an hour show. Me too. I thought I was going to go 30 minutes. Michelle, 10 more minutes, my ass. I'm ass off. Nothing about Vando. Yeah, the bench is standing up, but my wife said, I'll be nice. I just don't want him to miss his flight so I can get him back tomorrow. Yes. So that'll be it. I kept pushing it back an extra 5 to 10 minutes, but let's wrap here. I appreciate you all for rocking with me for nearly 2.5 hours, our longest stream, almost by double. I think my previous longest was like an hour 20, hour 25. But that will do it for tonight's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on channel notifications. If you have not subscribed yet, and you've been on the stream for 2.5 hours or parts of it, please consider subscribing. And if you have subscribed but haven't turned on channel notifications, please consider doing so and make sure you don't miss any of these streams moving forward. And I can't promise they'll all be 2.5 hours, but when I can, they will be. Also, I should just start streaming more, and that'll, we could split it up during the week. But then for those listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your podcast platform of choice, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to post the full 2.5 hours on there, but maybe we'll see. But if you are listening on a podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back on Monday with a new episode of Buha's Block. I will talk to you then. Thank you again, Late Night Gang. Peace out.